coming to you from the Hudson Media Group studio. This is Talking Politics, and I am the professor, Fernando Uribe. There's a lot to discuss, so let's get started. Here's what I'm thinking about right now. And Rutgers University does indeed excel at wasting money. Now, let me preface this by saying that I am as devoted a Rutgers University alumnus as you'll find. I enjoy going to football games. I know, they suck right now, but when they've been good, it's truly an amazing experience. I enjoy going to basketball games, and kudos to them for starting off this season 4-0, having recently just beaten Syracuse University and still being ranked in the top 25. And of course, I wear my apparel anywhere and everywhere that I possibly can, along with the fact that I tell all of my students that they should transfer to Rutgers University when at all possible. But recently, I'm indeed disappointed with the State University of New Jersey. Now, as reported this past week, the university has decided to hire Anna Branch as its vice president for equity to grapple with the on-campus issues of diversity, inclusion, and equity, thus enabling Inobong Anna Branch as its first ever senior vice president for equity. Now, Branch is a scholar who has done extensive research on modern racial inequality. One of those liberal arts majors or fields of research that sometimes we wonder how it gets funded. But in any event, she did assume the role this past September. Now, one of the university's goals under her leadership, as it says, is to build a more inclusive environment and foster genuine connections and cooperation across several aspects of campus life. Something she suggested needs improvement, even in a state known for its diversity. In other words, she's working to make the university, quote, culturally effective. Now, let me remind everybody here, because maybe you've all forgotten, but Rutgers University has been named the most diverse university and college specifically by U.S. News & World Report in their Best Values in College edition as recently as 2018, and they've been in the top 10 in recent years past. So basically, we're paying $300,000 a year out of your tax dollars for a professional complainer. This is what our tax dollars are going to. And folks, this is, again, and this is something that drives me crazy. We're throwing money at a problem that doesn't exist. And this is what Rutgers University, as well as other liberal arts colleges and universities, are doing all across this country. Let's throw money at a problem where, quite frankly, it's non-existent. Now, one thing is to say that Rutgers is the most diverse college and university in the country, which it's been, and I'm thankful to say that, it's nice to see the recognition on the U.S. News & World Report website and also the Best Values in College annual online publication. But is this what we should be spending almost $250,000 on? I mean, really? As if departments on all three campuses here in New Jersey at Rutgers University don't need more faculty, or more adjunct professors, or perhaps more administrators that maybe handle student life. This is somehow on the priority list of Rutgers University. And listen, and let me be fair about something, because I don't want to come down on the newly named president of Rutgers University, Mr. Holloway. Okay, and kudos to you, man. You're the first black president of Rutgers University. Hey, bravo, cheers to that. It's a great accomplishment, and it's an amazing feat in academia. And I'll give you credit because over the summer, Dr. Holloway, you made sure not to cave in to all the social justice clowns and all the woke fools who were outraged that, we still have a university named after potentially a slave owner, because that is what Colonel Henry Rutgers was. Now, again, for those of you that don't know who Colonel Henry Rutgers was, Colonel Henry Rutgers was one of General George Washington's most trusted soldiers in the American Army as we were fighting to, again, gain independence from the monarchy and King George in England. And you know what? Because of the heroism and because of the bravery of Colonel Henry Rutgers, along with American soldiers at the Battle of the Raritan River, guess what? Queens College, which is the sixth oldest college in the country, was renamed Rutgers College, and so on and so forth. But thankfully, Dr. Holloway didn't cave to all these idiots because somehow statues of Colonel Henry Rutgers trigger people. So you know what, Dr. Holloway? Props to you, man. You didn't cave to these fools, and I'm glad that you're sticking to this. But you do this, but then you decide, along with the administration, to hire essentially a professional complainer. That's what Dr. Branch is. Now, again, no offense to Dr. Branch. I don't know her, even if you show me a picture of her, per se. But you know what? This is unnecessary. And it reminds us all about sort of, next time someone bitches and moans about, oh, well, college should be free or we should wipe out student debt. You know what we should do is cut out the waste that administrators put forth on our college campuses and look no further than Rutgers University. Again, folks, we're paying over $250,000 from our tax money to pay for someone to hire, right, to address a problem that doesn't exist on the campus of Rutgers University. I mean, what's next for Rutgers or all these other liberal arts colleges and universities? Let me guess, BLM the major? See, you know what? Let me think maybe of what the curriculum and the course numbers will be. I don't know, maybe bitching and moaning 103. I don't know, perpetual victimhood 105. Oh, the importance of rioting and looting 108. Oh, well, here's the best one. Maybe, staying woke and going broke 109. Folks, this is the stupidity that academia has become. And unfortunately, my alma mater is now contributing to it. I mean, again, if you can write to Dr. Holloway, as I have, and again, I'm not trying to undercut anybody or deny anybody employment, but folks, Rutgers doesn't need this. We don't need this sort of job title on the campus of, again, one of the most diverse, if not the most diverse, college and university in the entire nation. It's a reminder, folks, about why we get so upset at academia and why we get so upset at people in Trenton who are in charge, because they continue to spend money for all these ridiculous causes, right? Only just to cater to the social justice clowns and the woke fools. And you know what, folks? Let me tell you something. Maybe Rutgers should change its motto. Maybe the state of New Jersey should change its motto. And it should go like this: stay woke, and guess what? We'll all go broke. And that's what life is in New Jersey. That's what life is apparently at Rutgers University. And you know what? I'm sure it's at all the other colleges and universities, not just in the Garden State, but throughout the country. It's sickening, folks, and I don't know about you. You should be as outraged as I am that our tax dollars are being wasted like this. And that's what I'm thinking about right now. And now to some local stories for your consideration. And a shout out to John Hines with the Hudson County View for his report on this story. And while we're at it, like I said, since I love to sort of ridicule social justice clowns and woke fools because they make it so easy for me, here's a story that should really kind of boil your blood because, quite frankly, it's just a nuisance of what these types are becoming, not just in Hudson County, but around New Jersey and around the country, and we've known that for quite some time. Now, a judge has ruled in favor of Hudson County Executive Tom DeGise in granting temporary restraints that will hinder ICE protests in front of his home for the foreseeable future. Now, the order issued by Hudson County Superior Court Judge Jeffrey Jablonski this past week prevents protesting or picketing in front of the county executive's New York Avenue residence. Now, the order provides other specific parameters that include limiting protesting, which can't exceed 10 people, to the corner of New York Avenue and Congress Street in the Jersey City Heights, the intersection closest to the county executive's home. Now, additionally, protesters cannot come within 200 feet of the county executive's property. Picketing can only occur between 7 p.m. and 8 p.m., and protests can only take place once every 2 weeks. And the Hudson County Sheriff's Office must be notified 24 hours prior to the start of any protests, according to the judge's order. Now, Hector Segura, again, one of the notorious social justice clowns and woke fools in Hudson County, who is part of the Progressive Democrats of Hudson County, said the decision to get the courts involved shows that their protests are having an impact, which it's not, folks. I mean, it's utter BS, but I'll get to that in a moment. The attorney said, this shows that our protests are really getting to them. Shutting down free speech is something we expect our Republicans, like Donald Trump, to do. We've only engaged in nonviolent acts of civil disobedience, as he told Hudson County View. Now, the county executive, who said just he has no plans to rescind the ICE contract in light of protests, which began last week, expectedly applauded the decision. Quote, tonight all the protesters will be handed a copy of the judge's orders and told to disperse, and we can finally have some peace and quiet. Now, prior to the order being issued, Hudson County View had reached out to a handful of elected officials who spoke against renewing the ICE contract, seeking their opinions on the protest in front of the DeGise residence. For example, Jersey City Freeholder Bill O'Day of District 2 said, quote, protests generally are just, but they should be fair and reasonable. Protesting at someone's house after midnight is unreasonable. If they want to protest from 9 until 5 or 6 p.m., that's fine. Now, again, as a reminder, Freeholder Bill O'Day voted against the contract renewal, as he did in 2018. But when you're banging drums and chanting until midnight, people have a right to some peace and quiet, but it's a thin line. If people want to stand in front of someone's house all night, quietly and not make any noise, that seems reasonable too. Jersey City Ward Councilman James Solomon indicated that while public officials need to be able to deal with protesters in the midst of the controversy, he also believes families should be left out of the fray. My basic principle, according to the councilman, is that public officials can and should be subjected to any form of protest, and people's families should be kept out of it. When you're protesting at someone's home, it's a tough line to draw because you're incorporating people's families, he explained. All right, folks, let me unpackage this a little bit because, as you know on this program, I love making fun of these people because you know what? They make it easy for me. And I know a lot of people watching at home sometimes reach out to me either via social media, on direct messenger, text, email, whatever, or they even see me on the street. And they say, Fernando, sometimes you're a little too bombastic. Sometimes maybe you come off as a little too divisive. Well, you know what? Here's a spoiler alert for you. Maybe I wouldn't have to be if it wasn't for these insufferable children who, by the way, who look like a bunch of kids who are just bitching and moaning that they didn't get an extra scoop of ice cream after dinner, and now they're having a meltdown and a tantrum. That's what these people look like. Folks, let me tell you something about ICE. Okay, these contracts or these agreements with local county jails have been in existence since the 90s. You know who was president back then? Bill Clinton. Were any of you bitching and moaning back then? Well, of course not. You could hear a pin drop with your silence. They've been in effect for decades now. So for whatever reason, now you want to have a meltdown because you want to be so woke and you want to feel so just. Folks, here's a reality for you. If we remove them out of the county jail in Kearney and we move them somewhere else, the following will happen. Number one, if they have any family nearby, guess what? Those family members can't go see these detainees. Secondly, for any attorneys who are working on their cases pro bono, which many of them are, let's be very honest, I know many of attorneys who work in immigration law who take on these sort of cases pro bono, and they do it all the time. Guess what? Instead of having to drive 20 minutes to Kearney, New Jersey, maybe you have to drive 3 or 4 hours to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, or Dover, Delaware. Okay? That just doesn't seem, very humane, since all you clowns out there want to talk about humanity and what's just and fair. All right? Well, guess what? Number three, if we lose that revenue stream coming from the federal government, and I know people want to say, well, it's only $8 million. What's the big deal? Well, have you seen $8 million? Not in your lifetime. I know I haven't. And guess what? And the fourth thing, if this revenue stream does indeed disappear because we're not getting it from the federal government, guess what's going to happen, folks? Because it's inevitable. The county freeholders are going to sit there and say, you know what? We need to sort of make up for this loss of revenue. And you know what happens? Newsflash, your taxes will go up somehow. Maybe your property taxes, maybe they'll raise the sales tax. Something will affect your pockets. Now, I don't know about any of you. Maybe if you went to college and you took Econ 101, or maybe you didn't. But for many of you, it sounds like you didn't, because you know what? This is basic Econ 101. And when this happens and taxes are raised, then you'll bitch and moan. Oh, why are my taxes going up? Because of you morons that want to talk about, this is what's fair and just. Getting rid of these contracts or the other bombastic language you're using on social media. This is what's going to happen, folks. Okay? Now, the ICE contract was voted on. It's a done deal. That's it. Move on. Do you think harassing an elderly man like Tom DeGeese and his wife at his home is proper? Folks, it's not like Tom DeGeese lives in Paramus or Bergen County or some suburb where he has, maybe 10, 20, 30, maybe 50 feet between him and his neighbor. No, it's a densely populated area in the Jersey City Heights. So you're literally on top of each other. It's not like his home is, tens or dozens of feet away from his neighbor. No, they're right on top of each other. So when you're being a nuisance and harassing Tom DeGeese, you're harassing other people on that block. That can include other elderly people and maybe other parents with their children, maybe more small children. So when you're out there making noise and not letting these parents put their babies to bed or their kids to bed because you want to be out there acting like a bunch of jackasses, well, guess what? You deserve all the vitriol you're getting. And even this week on social media, especially on Twitter, the county executive, in a courageous move, decided to defend his, action here. And you know what? I applaud him. And I went to social media and I defended the county executive. And I got some vitriol too. Folks, it doesn't matter to me. You can come at me all you want. But this is the problem with social justice clowns and the woke fools. You're all about what's just and all about what's humane. But you know what? The problem is you can't see the forest from the freaking trees. You don't think with your pockets, you think with your stupid hearts. And guess what? That's what makes it more expensive for all of us. I don't know about you folks, but you know what? I applaud the judge giving this restraining order because people have to have some peace and quiet. You went to the, you spoke during the public portion of the freeholder meeting. You had your say. You lost. Take the L. Get over it. And I don't know about you, but I'm just tired of these people. They're just absolutely insufferable, and they're everything that's toxic about today's political climate. And speaking of that court order, local activist and, again, social justice clown and woke fool Hector Oseguera was arrested this past week for violating the very same court order I just discussed. Once again, a shout out to John Hines with the Hudson County View for his report on this story. Now, 4 people were arrested for protesting outside of the home of Hudson County Executive Tom DeGeese, despite a court order, which included, for example, members of Progressive Democrats of New Jersey, the notorious Hector Oseguera and the other idiots, who detailed his experience during a phone interview this afternoon with the Hudson County View. Quote, when you seek recourse against the law, you need some sort of specificity. If a regular person tried to get the restraining order that Tom DeGee's got, they would never get it. We were exercising our First Amendment rights. No, Hector, you were being a pain in the ass. You're being a nuisance. You're being insufferable. I mean, you're being your usual self, but I mean, let me not digress from this. This is the problem here. Yeah, but I'll get back to that in a minute. Again, going on with the quote from the attorney, quote, the officers there were very aggressive and they were looking to arrest people. Gee, I don't know, maybe because you're being a nuisance and you're being a pain in the ass and you're causing ruckus and unnecessary noise on a quiet, block in the Jersey City Heights where elderly people live and maybe parents with small children live. Ooh, I don't know. Did you ever think about that? Anyway, he goes on to say, quote, I honestly think it's really sad that the county executive would go to these lengths to subject working class people, women of color, people of color to this for expressing our freedom of speech and the rights to voice our concerns to a public official like Tom DeGee's. He sort of signed up for this. Now, the order again says that protesters cannot come within 200 feet of the county executive's property. Picketing can only occur between 7 p.m. and 8 p.m. Protests can only take place once every 2 weeks, once again, and the Hudson County Sheriff's Office has to be notified 24 hours prior to the start of any protests, which also cannot exceed 10 people. Now, Oseguera is a Union City resident, along with Stacy Cohn, Greg of Wharton, New Jersey. Wow, someone not from Hudson County coming to bitch and moan here? I'm shocked. There was also Jake Epros of Jersey City, good, at least it's a local resident, and Brian Guevara of North Bergen, again, another out-of-towner who has no business being there, were all charged with contempt for violating an order issued by Hudson County Superior Court Judge Jeffrey Jablonski. Now, again, this order set specific parameters around the protest, according to Hudson County Sheriff Frank Scolari. Now, video of the incident was posted on Instagram and indicates that the majority of 24 or so protesters were unaware of the order prior to arriving, and the arrest occurred as many of the protesters were leaving after being told to disperse repeatedly. Protests had started this past week in light of the Board of Chosen Freeholders extending the agreement with the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, otherwise known as ICE, potentially through 2030 at the recent meeting on November the 24th. Now, while DeGee's has been clear that he has no plans to cancel the contract, protesters are not, that hasn't halted any of the activities in front of his home. Additionally, Oseguera pointed out how difficult it is for someone with an abusive spouse or partner to get a restraining order, as well as that no one went to New York Avenue last night with the intention of getting arrested. Although things didn't go as smoothly as he hoped, getting arrested around 10 p.m. and not getting back home until 4 a.m., oh, boo-hoo, he is feeling confident about when he has his day in court. Now, that court order is invalid in a lot of ways, so we don't feel compelled to abide by it. A judge can sign an illegal order, and it happens sometimes. We will have our day in court, but when we do, I'm sure it won't stand. Now, Oseguera indicated that Jablonski's order will certainly be challenged, saying that counsel has been retained, but declined to name who will be representing these activists at the time. Those charged this past week have a court date set for December 30th at 1 p.m. Folks, let me unpackage it as I just did in the previous segment. This is what makes people like Hector Oseguera, other local activists like Roger Quesada, and all these clowns absolutely insufferable. You know, folks, I've outlined it once and I've outlined it many times. I don't have to beat a dead horse here, even though that's a really bad pun to use. But anyway, the reality is that, folks, these ICE contracts and the way detainees are held, I mean, I've seen it with my own eyes because I've worked at jails, okay? And I've gone to jails while working in government, and I've seen conditions at the Hudson County Jail in Kearney. I've also seen conditions at the Essex County Jail in Newark, in my capacity in working in the criminal justice system before entering academia. So I'm not some career academic that's never seen, real life or has only known a textbook. I've seen real life, okay? And I've seen what these conditions are. And folks, what ICE is doing is everything that they are required to do under federal law. Are there some individuals there who are here illegally, perhaps with minor offenses? Sure, that happens, but they're here illegally. Are we also detaining very serious criminals? Absolutely. Folks, again, the idea of sovereignty and preserving our borders and enforcing immigration law, that's not fascist, that's not being a Nazi. And these words are thrown around by the left and by, again, the social justice clowns and the woke fools. They're thrown in such a cavalier way, it's disgusting. I was reading on the Twitter feed of County Executive Tom DeGee's this week, where some idiots were talking about, I don't like the fact that my tax dollars are paying for concentration camps. Folks, you ever know anyone that's been to a concentration camp? I know many people I know many people of Jewish descent. When you throw that word around, it triggers them, and it should rightfully, because of what happened to their ancestors. But you know what? That's the problem with many on the left and those who consider themselves to be progressives and liberals and woke, right? And your heart's in the right place. You throw these words around because you're trying to, for the sake of hyperbole, and it just doesn't work. And by now, we've all become desensitized. So whether it's Hector Seguera or the other fools that got arrested along with him, you know what? Yeah, you're entitled to your day in court, okay? You have a right to protest, but you don't have a right to harass an elderly man. Again, no disrespect to Tom DeGeese. He's young in sort of life years, but he's considered elderly, okay? And you know what? It doesn't give you the right to harass him, his family, to smear him or his family when you don't agree with the decision by the Hudson County freeholders. And then worse off, you decide to go to the Malibu Diner in Hoboken recently to protest in front of freeholder Anthony Romano during a fundraiser he was having because you want to be, woke and everything else. I hope you dumbasses freeze next time you decide to protest. Okay, you're being nothing but a nuisance. You're being nothing but an inconvenience to everybody around you. You lost, take the L, shut up already, and move on. Again, folks, I've already outlined why these contracts are beneficial. It's not because I'm inhumane. It's not because, I hate immigrants. I'm the son of immigrants, for God's sakes. So for all you idiots that write out there on social media, Fernando's a sellout, or Fernando's this or that, or Uncle Tom. I'm none of those things, you morons. You know what I am? I'm an academic. I'm someone that thinks logically and rationally, something that all of you are incapable of. And it's obvious when you're taking to social media, smearing and harassing the county executive. You're also going to his home or harassing or smearing anyone who doesn't think like you. It's what makes a lot of you absolutely intolerable, insufferable, and just toxic. God, what a waste of life you people are. There, I said it. Here's a story that permeates on what outrages many of us as it pertains to the hypocrisy put forth by the left in our political climate. And again, shout out to John Hines with the Hudson County View for his report on this story. Now, the city of Jersey City has shut down the Maritime Park restaurant for recently violating COVID-19 restrictions during a New York Young Republican Club gala that took place last week. Now, the establishment known as the Maritime Park, which is located at 84 Audrey Zapp Drive near Liberty State Park, has been ordered closed until such time as the operators prepare and submit a written operational plan to the Jersey Department of Environmental Health. And the order was signed by the Division of Environmental Health Director, James Bohr, as well as posted online by Jersey Mayor Stephen Fulop. Quote, describing how they intend to comply with Governor Phil Murphy's executive orders, 183, 192, and 194 specifically, regarding capacity mandates and mask wearing. Failure to comply will lead to fines and court appearances. Now, recently, during the gala, the New York Young Republican Club couldn't have their gala in Manhattan, again, due to the draconian measures implemented by New York Mayor Bill de Blasio and, of course, Governor Andrew Cuomo. So they decided to come across Hudson to Jersey City, and why not help bring some revenue to one of the small businesses here. Now, Mayor Stephen Fulop tweeted the following morning after seeing pictures online surface about the fundraiser that local authorities will be investigating the Maritime Park in relation to the event and then blasted the disregard for COVID-19 guidelines in a statement. The mayor went on to say, quote, in Jersey City, we take COVID enforcement very seriously. I'll get to that in a minute. And this event appears to be an egregious violation of the governor's executive orders, including capacity limitations and mandatory mask wearing. This event blatantly disregards the protections but it puts in place to safeguard the community from further contagion and has put Jersey City and countless others at serious risks. Now, again, a spokesman for the Maritime Park said that evening that the booking was last minute in a room that had a maximum capacity of 600 people. Now, the New Jersey State Police were on the premises, actually, and oversaw the venue before and during the event, and drinks were only available via tableside servers. Quote, the New Jersey State Police were in fact on site throughout the event to ensure guidelines were followed prior to the issuing of the initial statement, as well as the order to temporarily close. Now, folks, one of the great things about this event, and actually I got an invite to it, I couldn't attend, but I would have liked to have met Florida U.S. Representative Matt Gaetz, who was in attendance. Now, the original guest of honor was going to be former Alaska Governor Sarah Palin, but she couldn't make the trip because of having to just fly from Alaska to New Jersey, as her office indicated, didn't sit well with her. And you know what, folks? It's interesting to me where, this is becoming political, where Governor Phil Murphy and Jersey City Mayor Stephen Fulop, and even Chief Prosecutor Jake Hudnut are, enforcing these laws. But in June, everybody remember when people went to City Hall in Grove Street to protest Black Lives Matter because, remember, they're so down and so woke. Remember? Because, people had to, scream for George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and whatever, right? Oh, well, tons of people were gathered there. Thousands of people were gathered in front of City Hall, some with masks, some not. None of them were engaging in any social distance, and not a peep from Mayor Fulop, right? Because as long as it's for a cause that he believes in, it doesn't matter. You could be out there, COVID doesn't exist. But when it comes to people from the other side gathering, apparently from what it seems, the state police were there and they weren't violating any state policies or guidelines. Hey, but since you don't agree with them, Mayor Fulop, guess what? You want to sick the chief prosecutor and the Department of Health on them. But you know what? When it came to Black Lives Matter in June in front of City Hall, not a peep from you, Mayor Fulop, because you know what? You have to be down. You got to make sure that everyone knows that you're down with the cause. You know what? It's the typical hypocrisy we see from the left. Whether it's Stephen Fulop, whether it's Phil Murphy, whether it's Andrew Cuomo, whether it's Bill de Blasio, folks, if they're down with your cause, believe me, COVID doesn't exist. And if they're not down with your cause, believe me, COVID is going to ravage you all day, every day. Folks, it's a typical hypocrisy we see from the left each and every day. As a reminder, folks, the Union City Local PBA number 8 is still doing their toy drive until December the 19th. Now, you can drop off toys at police headquarters, which is located at 3715 Palisade Avenue in Union City, right between Burger Lane Avenue and Palisade Avenue. Again, I want to applaud and salute all the brave men and women in the Union City Police Department and also in the Union City Local PBA number 8 for their contributions and for their dedication to the community throughout 2020, especially during this pandemic. Now, let's do our part, and whatever you can donate, please consider doing so at police headquarters, because you know what? During the holiday season, let's bring a smile to as many faces as we can of the children here locally in Hudson County who have been through so much, whether it's been virtual learning in school, whether it's been losing family members due to COVID-19, or the other hardships that have presented themselves in 2020. Let's try to make the holidays as pleasant as we can for our local children. So once again, the Union City Local PBA number 8 toy drive is still in effect until December the 19th. Please drop off any toys you can at police headquarters, once again located at 3715 Palisade Avenue in Union City. And that's our show for this week. As a matter of fact, that's our last show for 2020. I want to take this opportunity to thank you all for supporting Talking Politics and the Hudson Media Group throughout this entire year. It's been a rough one, folks, to say the very least. Whether it's been tackling COVID, the loss of family, friends, and colleagues, a very contentious election, and everything else going on in Hudson County and in New Jersey and even throughout the country. You've been with us throughout the entire year. I want to thank you all again for supporting this program, and I continue to represent you each and every week and talk about the issues that matter to regular, everyday working class people like you and I. Once again, I want to thank you for tuning in and, of course, supporting the program throughout 2020. And we'll return in January after Christmas break and, of course, the new year. Once again, folks, you can check out all the excellent programming brought to you by the Hudson Media Group by going to their website, www.hmgtvshows.com and www.livestream.com/HMGTV. Don't forget to like the Hudson Media Group on Facebook and also follow it on Instagram and Twitter. Don't forget to check out my local podcast, the 4-time award-winning Talking the Hudson, by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talking the Hudson from any PC, Mac, smartphone, or tablet. Once again, folks, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Festivus, and best wishes for a happy and healthy 2021. We'll see you in January here, folks. I'm Fernando Uribe. Thank you so much for watching.
Don't forget to catch Fernando's podcast at blogtalkradio.com/talkonthehudson. New episodes available every Wednesday night at 9 p.m.